days.
Exactly.
But yeah, welcome everybody. Chris, did you watch Gladiator before the call?
Did I watch Gladiator before it? No, I didn't.
No, you should have. You've been hyped, you know. Are you not entertained? Johnny, what's
next
up,
time.
dude?
Next time.
Welcome everybody. Hey, Catherine, Kim, hey. Now, normally compliance is not like a fun subject, but Chris is so handsome and devilish, it becomes really fun.
Pretty darn fun, let me tell you.
So I've been looking forward to this.
Oh yeah, no, people are going to be on the edge of their seats. I'm just put it that way.
Johnny agrees.
Yep.
Joe just requests we make it fun, so that's all.
All right.
But yeah, welcome everybody. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes to jump on. Hope everyone has good plans for the holiday weekend. And yeah, thanks for jumping on, Chris.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I appreciate you guys linking up with us. And again, I agree. I actually was kind of nervous because I was like, man, even the title, no one's going to sign up for this. So I appreciate everybody who has signed up for this and is jumping in. And I promise that it will not be too confusing or difficult and encouraging in the end.
You know what's surprising? If you look at all the webinars we've done, the most signups are for compliance and regulatory.
Well, right,
so
and that's the thing. Yeah, because it's confusing and it's difficult, and you really want to make sure that you got it right. So
yeah,
we're gonna make it happen today for everybody. So,
and I get to go. We're gonna do a case study on it, but we're buying clinics now just to like prove the model. I don't know anything about compliance. I emailed you earlier, so we're gonna jump on this week. But it's a lot to figure out, and Chris has been an amazing partner of ours, and we're really grateful. He's one of the top experts in the space. So what's up, Carolyn? I'm just going to sit back and learn. So I'm going to let Chris kind of take it from here. We'll go ahead and get started. But Chris Seitz from Guardian, one of our favorites in the space, and I'm going to let him rock and roll.
Awesome. Can you see my slides, first and foremost?
We can.
All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate everybody taking the time to jump in today. End of the week. It's summer. It's almost 4th of July weekend. So I appreciate more than you know. You get taking the time to, one, I mean, you're not really coming to listen to me speak. I actually, as a physician myself, very much appreciate that you guys even signed up for this webinar, because I think it just shows a commitment to making, doing healthcare business right. And I think that's huge. It's a testament to you guys that you're showing up today. That in and of itself, in my mind, means that you are probably more likely to succeed than others. And again, you should pat yourself on the back a little bit for that. I am not going to droll on about navigating compliance, but I am going to run you through what has taken me even a very long time to truly wrap my head around and figure out. My hope is that me taking the time to dive into it over a long period of time and figure it out, trial and error, that I can present it to you guys today in a straightforward fashion that hopefully resonates. This is recorded. We will send it out. But again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, we will do some questioning at the end. I really want to make sure that I get to those. And it's telling me I have network issues, so let me know, Chris, if all of a sudden I cut out.
If I have to take over a compliance webinar, everyone's screwed. I just want to be totally honest about that part. And Chris, you might need to go to your settings because your camera turned off when you share screen. There's like a little toggle button to make sure. Because I mean, it's not the same if we don't get to see your beautiful face.
Oh, no, I turned it off now. I'm back, but my slides are gone.
I might have ruined it. Just go. It's okay.
That's okay. I'll just let everybody know too. This is the first time I've used Webinar Kit, so this is we're gonna do it.
You did email them like there may be issues. And I was like, Chris, there's gonna be issues.
There's gonna be issues for sure.
You crushed it. We've handled it so far.
Yep, so far so good.
All right, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Awesome. So quick intro about a little bit about us, Guardian. So Guardian Medical Direction, we're a digital health platform that we help nurses and other healthcare professionals start and scale their own healthcare businesses by providing the medical oversight, compliance, and telemedicine resources that you need. So if you want to check out what we're doing, this is not a sales pitch, but again, check us out at guardianmd.com. A little bit about me so that you don't think I'm just some random Joe Schmo telling you stuff that I don't know anything about. I am a board certified emergency physician. I currently serve as a CEO, and I'm a co-founder of Guardian Medical Direction. I live in the Detroit area, did my training here. I'm actually now licensed in all 50 states. Which was a feat in and of itself. Did a lot of travel medicine throughout COVID. Done a lot of telemedicine as well. We founded Guardian Medical Direction in 2021, and now I currently, again, serve as our Chief Executive Officer and Chief Medical Officer. We, to date, oversee about 650 clinics across the country, doing things anywhere from IV hydration to telemedicine, primary care, urgent care, the whole gambit. So again, we are also still learning. I always say that, like I said, there's, our goal is at Guardian is to really create a gold standard in medical oversight. And we will always strive to get there, but probably never will, right? That's our goal, and it's something that we're always going for. So let me talk a little bit about the goals for today for you guys. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to start by defining the difference between a healthcare business and a healthcare practice. All right. Then we're going to explain corporate practice of medicine and how to set up the MSO practice relationship. We're going to then review scope of practice guidelines as they pertain to business services. And then I promise to share some practical ways of actually bringing your businesses into compliance. Some of you may already own businesses in the healthcare space. Some of you may be looking to start a business in the healthcare space. This really applies to everyone. And again, appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. Before I start, though, because many of you are probably nurses, nurse practitioners, clinicians in some way, like myself. And we're talking about business compliance. So I want you to do me a favor, because this is the first key part to make sure that this all makes sense to you. Take off your clinical hat. I will tell you when you can put it back on, but right now you are a business owner, right? You are looking to start a business. I want you to wear that hat, and I want you to ignore your clinical hat, because the first thing that happens a lot of times when especially clinicians look at the regulations and compliance pieces of starting healthcare businesses, we confuse ourselves immediately because in our mind we're wearing two hats. So again, there are two hats. You can wear two hats. We're going to take one off for now. So as we start in here, I want you guys to think about yourself as the business owner and only the business owner. All right. So with that, what are we trying to do here? Am I starting a healthcare business? So the first question, if you're starting a business, or maybe you've already started a business in the healthcare space, hopefully the question you ask yourself, or the question you are asking yourself, or the question you should ask yourself is, am I starting a healthcare business or a healthcare practice? And this is a key question that we have to start with. And I think this question starts us on the path of understanding right away. So first, what is a healthcare business? All right, so businesses that are healthcare businesses provide medical services, manufacture medical equipment or drugs, provide medical insurance, or otherwise facilitate the provision of healthcare to patients. EMR companies are healthcare businesses. Telemedicine companies like Teladoc and Amwell, healthcare businesses. Your IV hydration clinic may be a healthcare business. The goal of healthcare businesses, medical insurance companies are healthcare businesses. They facilitate the provision of healthcare to patients. That's the key word there. They facilitate it. A healthcare practice is the practice of medicine. And it's typically comprised of, it can be a business entity, but it's comprised typically of one or more physicians that are organized to provide patient care services, but where the practice is not a part of a hospital. If you're looking to start a hospital, I'm not your guy. The hospitals have whole different rules, and I don't know how they get away with a lot of stuff, but we're not talking about that today. But again, I want to start with this key differentiating point. A healthcare business facilitates the provision of healthcare, and a healthcare practice provides it. And the practice of medicine is what we want to talk about first. Who can own a healthcare practice? That becomes the question, right? So we understand what a healthcare business is. We understand what a healthcare practice is. So who can own a healthcare practice? Surprise, surprise, I don't have an answer for you because there's some things we have to look at, okay? It really depends. And that brings us to corporate practice of medicine, the doctrine of corporate practice of medicine. So when I say it depends, it really depends on your state, all right? Each state has its own rules and regulations around the corporate practice of medicine. An area where I see a lot of people get hung up when we talk about corporate practice of medicine, or CPOM, is that they think it's a law. So when they hear things that like, hey, Texas is a corporate practice of medicine state, they think that there's some one law in Texas that makes that happen. That's not the case. So corporate practice of medicine is a legal doctrine. And all states have either 1, 2, or 85 different laws and regulations that support that doctrine. But the doctrine itself is not exactly a law. The doctrine essentially protects patients from deceptive behavior that might come with the private ownership of medical corporations by non-licensed individuals, including the commercialization of the practice of medicine, the imbalance between patient obligations and stakeholder obligations, and interference of a physician's medical judgment due to outside influences. So CPOM laws restrict who can own and control certain healthcare entities and employ certain healthcare providers in order to protect physicians and other healthcare practitioners from being basically coerced or pushed to do things that maybe wouldn't be best for the patient, right? Simple way of putting this is that if you come to me and you say, hey, Dr. Seitz, I'm opening up this awesome clinic. I want you to be my doctor. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And then you as a CEO are like, hey, you know what, Dr. Seitz, I want to let you know that we can't really have you prescribing any blood pressure medications because they're pretty expensive and we don't have the money for it, right? Well, you can't do that, right? The idea of corporate practice of medicine is you can't tell me, the physician, how to practice medicine because that could be detrimental to the patient, right? If you're the CEO of a company, again, hopefully you guys all have your business hats on right now. You are tasked with growing your business, right? You need to make profit. You need to control your overhead. You need to do these types of things. And I think you can all see how, like, if you could just own physicians as well, you could dictate the practice of healthcare in a way that could become detrimental to patients. Because if Amazon could turn around tomorrow and start telling doctors how to practice medicine, you know, it probably wouldn't be great for all patients. Nothing against Amazon. I'm just saying, right? Like, this is what we need to protect against in the healthcare space. That's corporate practice of medicine. All states have some type of corporate practice of medicine. Like there's not a single state that says we don't believe that corporate practice of medicine doctrine. We think that anybody can tell anybody how to practice medicine. Like no one is saying that, right? But some states are silent when it comes to this doctrine. And I say silent, there are no laws, regulations, or stuff like that. And some states are very loud about it in terms of they have a lot of laws and regulations that support this doctrine. So when you hear somebody say like, oh, such and such state is a corporate practice of medicine state, it means that they have some types of laws, regulations, and guidelines to prevent this type of thing happening in healthcare. All right, so we know what a healthcare business is. We know what a healthcare practice is. We're still not sure if we can own one. We understand why we got to be careful because we understand corporate practice of medicine now. So the question becomes, can I own a healthcare practice? Well, once again, it's unfortunately not that cut and dry, right? Here's a list of corporate practice of medicine states, and you see in parentheses here, as defined by one attorney group. There are 33 out of the 50 states listed here. These states have varying levels of like very strict laws and regulations and more loose laws and regulations. If you go Google yourself, and I encourage you to do that, lists of corporate practice of medicine states, some lists have some states on them, some lists don't have states on them. So there is some gray here, right? But generally speaking, again, I think what we can think and rest in is that there's always something that should, and I think we can all agree to this, that should prevent a business from telling doctors and nurses how to practice medicine to some extent, right? So the bottom line here is that you have to consult an attorney. You have to consult an attorney who understands healthcare law in your state to really figure out if you as an individual business owner, right? That's the hat we're wearing right now. If you as the individual business owner can own the practice of medicine. As you can see here though, the answer is probably no. So like there are some states where like maybe you can go do it, but we're gonna operate when we're talking about navigating compliance, and we want to be in the most strict compliance we can be because that's what's right for our patients, right for our businesses, and right for our licenses. We're gonna move forward here in terms of like we're gonna assume you all work or live in a corporate practice of medicine state in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So how then do I compliantly structure or integrate a healthcare practice into my healthcare business? Because anybody can own a healthcare business, technically, right? The business of healthcare is facilitating it. I can create a business and help facilitate that care. I've done it. Guardian Medical Direction in itself is a healthcare business that helps facilitate and make things, better in healthcare so that it can happen. So this is when we look at how we structure this, then this is when we come to this MSO practice model. And I know I'm probably talking to a lot of nurses in this space right now and nurse practitioners. And this is why, please keep your business hat on. This is not the slide to put your clinical hat back on yet. I will tell you when you can. This is not the slide to do it. Because what happens a lot of times is that, nurses, nurse practitioners, non-physicians say, hey, I want to start a healthcare business. And they very quickly confuse what they can or can't do with that, with this model. So this is how the MSO practice model works. The healthcare business, now again, you are the healthcare business in this situation. The healthcare business serves as a managed service organization, or MSO. The MSO partners with a physician's healthcare practice, either a PC or a PLC, but basically a physician-owned healthcare practice whose job is to practice medicine. The managed service agreement is put into place between these two entities to legally bind them and protect them, right? We want to make sure that the business is protected and that the practice is protected as well. The practice then collects all the healthcare dollars and pays the managed service organization a fee for managing the organization. This is where people get really, really hung up and confused. So you'll hear all the time, like, well, what's the fee to the practice, or what's the fee to the medical director? You're thinking of it backwards, right? You have every right, and I would encourage you to, and you should start a healthcare business. But a lot of times you can't own the healthcare practice. So you're not paying the healthcare practice to allow you to practice medicine. Technically, they are paying you to manage their practice for you, for them in your doors, right? Let's use IV hydration as an example, right? A lot of us probably are in that, right? You as the IV hydration business owner own the company, the healthcare business, that basically facilitates the practice of medicine in your doors to your clients. But those patients are not your patients, because you can't legally own the practice of medicine. Those patients are the physician's patients, and that physician has to own a practice that those patients fall under. So that technically, and this is how you have to reframe, that practice is paying you to manage the day-to-day business. This is becoming more and more a key important part. There was a case in California just recently where there was a nurse-run managed service organization partnered with a healthcare practice owned by a physician. They had a great managed service agreement in place. Someone got reported because there was concern, and it went to the Attorney General's office for the state. And the Attorney General said, well, hang on a second. If the managed service organization is taking all the money from the patients for the practice of medicine, then this managed service agreement doesn't really make any sense. This is just a shell company for the managed service organization to practice medicine and essentially kind of rent out a license. That's still in the court system right now. That's actually escalated to the entire state level in California, and they're really looking at this whole model. So this is why there is an important part where the practice needs to collect the money from patients for healthcare services and then pay you, the business owner, a fee for managing the day-to-day. And it should be a substantial fee. It should be almost everything, right? If we're being honest, like, it can't a lot of times be 100%, because then it's just a shell company. But it should be a lot. Like in our model, it's like 96% goes back to you, because it should, right? You're doing the marketing, you're bringing the clients, you're managing the storefront, you're, like ordering the supplies, doing everything. Like, it should be almost everything. But we have to recognize that who owns the practice and who owns the managed service organization. And then you can see what happens is when you do it this way, everyone lives happily ever after, including the regulators, right? So let me show two different models that we see happen out there. And again, you're still wearing your business hat, okay? There's two practice ownership models. And you'll see attorneys say this sometimes, like, hey, you know what? You're right. You can't own the practice of medicine. But some states allow you to own part of it. So you're going to own 49% of the practice, and the doctor is going to own 51%. So technically the physician owns it, but you also own it too. That is a fine option. I will argue that I feel, I'll put it this way, that option two, and this is how we do it at Guardian, option two is a better option. And in option two, the physician owns 100% of the practice, and you own 100% of the healthcare business, or MSO. And here's why. And you can see the bottom of my slide here, the tip, starting with the end in mind. We're wearing our business hats. I don't know of a lot of people who started businesses with the goal of running them and working in them until they die, and or running them into the ground, right? Usually there's some type of exit strategy. You're going to sell this business, you're going to hand it to, someone's going to inherit it, whatever it might be. In option one, where you only own 49%, you got to be real certain that that physician, A, isn't going to up and walk away, B, isn't going to decide that they deserve more, C, that they're not going to take 51% when you sell it, even though they legally can, right? So this is where, and we've seen this happen. I actually had a group of nurse practitioners call me. It was like 8 p.m. one night, panicking because they said, hey, our medical director, who also happened to own our practice, died last night suddenly. And we woke up this morning and we can't see any of our patients, right? And we can't even pull in a new physician because like we only own 49% of a business that was 51% owned by a guy who's now dead. So we have to like restructure our whole business before we can even start seeing patients again. So this is why, again, and these are like attorneys will tell you either option is fine, and legally they are. But I warn against option one because I just think it can get sticky as a business owner, right? We're wearing our business hats. Option two here, what's nice about option two is that if the physician owns 100% of the practice and you own 100% of your managed service organization, and there's a managed service agreement between the two of you, if the doctor wants to up and walk away, you get to take your whole business, pivot to another practice, and keep going. You can sell your operational, business that is facilitating the practice of medicine 100% and keep 100% of the profits at any time, right? Does that make sense? So I think hopefully you guys can kind of recognize that these are two different options, but I think there is a little bit that needs to be warned against with option one, because I've seen it not play out well. All right. So we understand the difference between a healthcare business and a healthcare practice. We understand corporate practice in medicine and why those laws and regulations are in place to protect patients and protect healthcare practitioners. As business owners, we're thinking along this route. We see now how we can structure, hopefully, our managed service organization, own that business, partner it with a physician practice, and build a very profitable, scalable, sellable company, right? So now it's time to put our clinical hats on, though, okay? Because now, when we've established the business the right way, we have to start asking questions around scope of practice and the need for oversight. So you've structured your healthcare business correctly. Now, what services can the business or practice offer? Now we put our clinician hats on, right? Because these are actually separate things. And I think what happens a lot of times is that nurses and nurse practitioners and PA, or even doctors, we call the board of nursing or we call the board of medicine. And we ask them, hey, how do I legally structure my business? And they have no idea. And then we call the state or an attorney and we say, hey, how do I define my scope of practice in my license? And they have no idea because they're two different entities. The boards of nursing, medicine, chiropractic, they define what you can or can't do under your license. The state defines how and who what can own the practice of medicine. And they're two separate things. And I think we get really confused when we combine both of those, right? So if we're taking the state regulation compliance side, we've structured our business the right way. Now we have to say, okay, what can we do? Because here's the deal. Just because you own a business organization and you partner with a doctor, doesn't mean you can go start doing surgery tomorrow. Like you can't do everything in medicine just because now you're linked with a practice, right? So we have to look at scope of practice. Sure, this is something you guys are familiar with, but we'll go over it quickly. Scope of practice describes the procedures, actions, and processes that a healthcare practitioner is permitted to undertake in keeping with the terms of their professional license and is limited to what the law allows for specific education and experience and specific demonstrated competency. And to complicate it even more, every state defines your scope of practice different too. So if you are a doctor, even a doctor, as an emergency physician, my scope of practice in Michigan is actually different than it is in Ohio. I actually cannot do all of the same things I can do in Michigan that I could in Ohio. For me, it's like conscious sedation in certain things. There are certain states that say, hey, you know what? An anesthesiologist has to do that. An ER doctor can't. In Michigan, I can do that if I want to anytime. We have to understand now as clinicians what scope of practice is. So things you need to consider. What is permitted under my or my employees' licenses without supervision? So for a lot of you, you may be the business owner, right? You wear that hat. But then you also take that hat off and you put on the clinical owner or the clinical component, right? You also work in your business. Some of you may not be a clinician. Maybe you own the business and you're going to hire nurses and nurse practitioners and people to do the work, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what is permitted in my state for my or my employees' licenses without supervision? The second question is, what oversight or supervision is required for different aspects of my or my employees' licenses? Right? So there are certain things under your license, any practitioner's license, that you can do because you have the license. And there are certain things that you can do if you have the right medical oversight in place. What's actually interesting is there was an attorney I talked to a while ago who was telling nurses and nurse practitioners, you don't need a medical director in Texas or California. You need a practice owner. You need a doctor who owns the practice. And as an attorney whose job is to look at state laws and regulations and how healthcare businesses should be structured, he is absolutely right. But as someone who's not a clinician, he's also missing a piece. And that is that, yes, on the legal aspect of healthcare business, you need to have partnered with a practice like we defined. But for some of you, depending on what services you want to provide, the board of nursing or the board of chiropractic EMS board is going to tell you you also need a physician oversight for those things. So there's actually two, and they do not have to be the same. Many people say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, will you be my medical director? Oh, also I need you to hold the practice in your name so we can combine. And that can happen and work. I would caution you making sure that if you're going to do it that way, the physicians you're utilizing understand the legal components in your state, or at least have their own attorneys who can work, or they work with your attorneys. There's a lot of physicians more than willing to help. There's fewer physicians who truly understand what that ownership piece looks like. The next thing you want to ask yourself, is a patient-physician relationship required for any of the services or procedures that I want to offer? And this is where like good faith exams and clearance exams come into play. More and more states are starting to say, hey, like you can't, just because you can do these procedures doesn't mean that like you can do them, someone can walk in off the street. If you guys, a lot of you guys might know, in Alabama, they came out and said, hey, IV hydration has to have, medical spas, it has to have a good faith exam or clearance exam. There has to be the establishment of a patient-physician relationship. And the reason for that, hopefully you guys understand now, is that corporate practice of medicine piece, right? We want to make sure that we're stewarding the healthcare, the practice of medicine correctly. So we need to know if any of the services that we're providing or procedures that we're doing, do they require in our state a patient-physician relationship to be established? And then finally, what services or procedures are considered the practice of medicine in my state? So like I said, let's throw another wrench in there. Some states say, hey, medical grade skin products, you got to have a medical director for that. That's the practice of medicine. Other states say, that's fine. Anybody can sell those things. So you really have to understand what is considered the practice of medicine in your state as well. So hopefully you guys can kind of see what I'm trying to paint the picture of. Is there's kind of three buckets here. There is the legal corporate compliance piece, there is the financial compliance piece, and there is the clinical compliance piece. And they are not all in the same. There are different regulators and boards that hold you to each of those. Okay, so you really have to make sure that you're thinking about all these things across the board to make sure you're truly building healthcare business and healthcare practices in a compliant fashion. All right, so we've talked kind of high level, again, what's a business, what's a practice, corporate practice of medicine, how to structure that MSO PLLC relationship, how the funds need to run. We've talked about, again, then once we've had that established the correct way, how do we define scope of practice for ourselves if we're clinicians or the employees that we hire? What are the practical steps though, right? What do we do now? How do we bring, maybe today I don't have any of that in place. Maybe I have a couple pieces of it in place. It's okay. So what do we need to do to bring our business into compliance? So I always like to end on practical steps because it's completely irrelevant if I tell you all these things and don't tell you what to do. First is that making sure that your business and practice are structured correctly. If you haven't done so today, get a hold of an attorney, work with someone, make sure that you have that MSO practice relationship established the right way, with the funds running the right way, all that kind of good stuff. Then the next step is to really clearly define scope of practice. Really understanding hey, if I've got nurses or nurse practitioners or PAs or medical assistants, what can they do and what can they not do in my healthcare business? And defining that through things like protocols, procedures, and standing orders. Everybody in healthcare knows if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So again, we really want to make sure for our business as well, really documenting and defining that scope of practice stuff. These are the things that the boards come in and look for, right? How are you defining these different things? Who can do what and how, and do they need oversight? Do they not? If you really want to be above board, you should establish a physician-patient relationship with all patients through good faith exams and clearance exams. We're seeing more and more states, it happened in Nevada, it happened in Alabama, it happened in Washington. More and more we're seeing states require this for IV hydration, for medical spas, for really any kind of medical service that's being provided. The way we work with our clients, so we offer that through Guardian Medical Direction for our clients. We do good faith exams and stuff. Again, it doesn't have to be every time that someone wants to access you, they have to get cleared by a doctor. Typically, they get cleared for 6 months to a year of whatever service they're being cleared for, things like that. But again, the purpose behind establishing that patient-physician relationship is to make sure that we're being compliant with that corporate practice of medicine stuff. The last thing, as the business owner, the last thing you want to do is be accused of illegally practicing medicine. You know, in all honesty, you want to be able to point to the healthcare practice you're partnered with and be like, oh, no, I'm just doing what they told me to do. As a business owner, right? As the MSO business owner, that's what you want to be able to do to protect your business. And then as the clinician, if you're working within, and even for the people that you hire who have licenses, you want them to be able to point to protocol, procedures, and standing orders and say, no, I'm just following these guidelines as defined by the business and the practice and the state and things like that. Again, I would encourage you, like, I don't think that today in a lot of states you have to do good faith exams and clearance exams. I think if you really want to be above board, you should. I would encourage people who aren't doing them, make sure you have a plan for if and when the board or state comes in and says they're required. We are seeing more and more states do this. Again, the last thing you want to do is all of a sudden have to stop operations because you didn't have a plan in place for that. So I would at least encourage you to make sure you have a plan. The next thing here is making sure that the practice is collecting patient payments. This is what happened in California. We've seen it happen with some of the bigger franchises. It's starting to happen more often where the state comes in and they don't care about your managed service agreement. They want to follow the money, right? So again, if you really want to be in compliance, making sure that the practice is the legal entity actually taking in the patient payments and then passing back to you like the fee for running the whole thing. Establish appropriate levels of oversight for you and your employees' licenses. So again, we talked about there's a difference. Now we're talking about the clinical aspect. For scope of practice, certain things you can't do without the right medical oversight. Making sure you have medical directors, physician collaborators, those types of things in place. Again, it is not the same as the legal structure of your business. We're talking about the licensing part, right? What does your state require from an oversight standpoint for that? And then finally, do what's best for the patient. You guys know that there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of, we need to define scope of practice better in a lot of states. We need to define corporate practice of medicine regulations. Sometimes they can be somewhat unclear. I mean, like, there's a lot of work to be done. But I always say, if you are doing what's best for your patient, if you are striving to set things up in a compliant way, if you're striving to do what's right for your patient, if that's truly the case, usually the worst case scenario is that someone comes in and says, hey, we see that you're doing your best. Here's the new information. Change it. You change it and you keep going. Okay. So again, I think that's kind of like those practical steps we can take to move forward there. So hopefully that's it. I'm not going to keep going. So hopefully you guys, like, this has been like a little bit of a crash course, but hopefully navigate that compliance piece when it comes to healthcare business and healthcare practice. My other hope here is that I like to end on two things before we open up for questions. One, this can be intimidating. If you don't have this stuff in place today, it's okay. Let's just get it in place, right? If you're starting your business, let's try to do it. Let's try to do it right from the get-go. I was asked the other day by a nurse practitioner, what are the two pitfalls? She's looking to start a business. What are the two pitfalls you see people fall into when they're starting healthcare businesses? And I've got two answers to that. There's two pitfalls I see, and there's a little bit of a dichotomy here, okay? And I'm going to come back to my screen here so you can see my face when I say this. The first one is not setting it up correctly to begin with, right? I mean, really, like what people run into is that, like, scaling businesses that then they later find out weren't really, like, and then you got to go back and scramble. Like, save yourself the headache. Try to do it right from the beginning. But the second piece, the pitfall I see people do, is not starting. There is a ton of opportunity out there. Like, if you look at where healthcare is today, I truly believe, both as a founder of a digital health company and CEO, but as well as a physician, the physician shortage is not getting better. If we want to increase access to care, we have to find ways to allow all practitioners to run a healthcare business or practice in some way, shape, or form. Right? That is how we're going to increase access to care. I believe we can't do that the right way without the right medical oversight and stuff in place. That's why I built what I built, and I keep trying to build it. But again, like, if you look at where we've come post-COVID with digital health and telemedicine and patient experience, there is so much opportunity. And as business owners, a lot of money to be made making healthcare better. So again, like, on the one side, yes, pitfall, make sure you structure it the right way, make sure you do it the right way, do the compliance piece. And on the other side, don't let that intimidate you so much that you don't start. I really truly believe that. I think that is like just a key important part. So I will stop talking now, and we can open it up for questions.
But you have a lot of talking to do because there's a lot of really good questions. So just a fair warning. But no, thank you so much, Chris. That's like, I think that's it's so seamless how you put that. And I think state by state, it's just so confusing, but I think that was super useful for everyone. So if you're cool, I'll just run through the questions we got. And then
let's do it.
The first one was, one I just saw was, does Guardian do private consult? Yeah. If I think Jamie's on, you want to drop a link for a meeting, they'll sit with you and just I'm pretty sure, right? I'm just saying this for you, but you'll sit with them and just see if you can help them.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. So if you guys just go to guardianmd.com, you can book a discovery call with us. We'll walk you through all this stuff as well. Like I said, on a high note, not to pitch you, but like I said, I talked about 3 buckets: the legal compliance, the financial compliance, the clinical compliance. That's what we do. We really address each one of those. We will give you the medical oversight. We'll give you the legal structure. We'll give you the bank account. We'll give you good faith exams if you need them. We'll give you the protocol standing orders. Like, our goal is really to empower you to go increase that access to care. And so again, that's, like I said, we're more than happy to help and talk through it. Even if you're already doing it, you already have medical directors, but you got questions, just give us a call. So we'd love to talk about it and get people where they need to be.
Well, I know just from knowing you, Chris, like, we're buying clinics and we have equity in a bunch now, which is new for us because we've always consulted, but you're the first call I made because I want to do it right. So
awesome.
For me, if you want to trust the person that has done it 1,000 times versus yourself. So Anita said, how do they change good faith exam requirements? Do you know which states require?
Off the top of my head, Alabama, Washington, I believe Nevada. The trouble here is that if you ask, they'll tell you that they do, right? So like, it depends on your risk tolerance as a business owner. If you ask in Illinois, yes, it's required in Illinois. If you ask in Michigan, Ohio, yes, it's required. Are there regulators knocking on doors checking? No. Again, I think that there's that's where I've started to recommend, and I used to not. I used to say, listen, until someone tells you to do it, don't do it. I mean, just because as a business owner, right? Why take on that? However, more and more attorneys, if you look at Langia Law Firm, Cohen Group, Berta Dada, everybody's saying that everybody should be doing it. So when all the attorneys start to say it, I said, again, I'm a business owner myself. I have a lot of risk tolerance sometimes. There's certain things that I'm willing to take risk on. There's certain things I'm not. That's for you to decide as a business owner. Like I said, we don't require it, except in those states where they really come out and said, absolutely, this has to happen. We are seeing more and more states kind of start to take that stance. Louisiana came out and made a very weird statement about what nurses can and can't do, which we just ignored for now until they can better define that. So again, as they, I think we're going to see it more and more. And again, I think I'll just encourage people, don't see it as a discouraging thing. This is going to actually let you do this better and better so that you can scale bigger and bigger. And actually, for a long time, people would tell you, no, you're a nurse. You cannot do this at all. Well, that stopped, right? Now we can. So I always tell people, I want the board to call me. I'll be honest with you. If I had my way, I want every attorney group to call me, and I want every board of medicine to call me, and I want to run them through all my questions and have them tell me how to do it so I can go do it. Because then I know I'm good, right? And they don't do that, unfortunately. But again, I think that don't see that as a detrimental roadblock obstacle. See that as an opportunity to okay, if I do what they say, then awesome. Now I'm good. Now no one can question what I'm doing, right? That's the goal. So.
Well, and I was looking at cream rises to the top. I mean, everyone looks at Amazon now. How hard can you imagine how hard it was to build that infrastructure? If you do your infrastructure right, no one else is going to do it. Then a state comes down and says you have to do it. You've already been doing it. So all these other companies are going out of business. You're going to take that.
Yeah. And that's why I say too, you guys, I'm not going to name names, but you guys have seen even the last couple of months, bigger franchise groups in the IV space all of a sudden have to close out. And this is why they didn't have the structure in place. And they gave us a call. So we started picking them up because, again, like I said, when you may never get the call, I always put it this way, you may never get the call, you may never get the knock on the door. But if you do, you just really want to have your ducks in a row. You know what I mean? For your business, for your license, for all of it. So.
Yeah. Cool. And then Benilda, hopefully I said that right. She's in California. She has a collaborating MD for a clinic. She's hesitant to take on as medical director. Should I suspend my business for now? It's a stem cell injection IV hydration clinic, but still slow, just beginning phase.
Say that beginning part again. So she has a collaborating physician.
MD for clinic. She's hesitant to take on as medical director.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong when I interpret this, whoever submitted it, but it sounds like you have a collaborating physician because you need to for your license. You're hesitant to use that person to own the practice side of what you do. And I think that's what you mean by medical director. It doesn't have to be the same person. You can partner with a different medical practice and then use that person as a collaborator. They can be separate. Again, this is why we get really confused. Like the legal structure of your business is somewhat separate from who's monitoring and overseeing your medical licenses. It does not have to be the same. So like at Guardian, like the way we do it is that we partner you with Guardian medical groups, which are each state, the healthcare practices. And then you get other doctors who work like separate and under those. And that's perfectly fine. So I would say if you're hesitant, don't do it. I'll say that right away. If you are hesitant in any way, shape, or form, I wouldn't do it. I'll also say I wouldn't stop. I would just find a different solution. I honestly, like that's the entrepreneur side of me and the clinical side of me. If you have any hesitation with the doctor owning part, like don't do it. That seems like a very bad idea. Also, no, I don't think you should suspend your business in any way. I think you should just find a different solution next week and move forward. So,
I love that. Yeah. And then Michael, how much do you charge for a good faith exam?
So we only offer good faith exams for clients. And what I mean by that is that we are not like, we don't offer good faith exams as like its own service. If you're using us for our medical oversight and all that kind of stuff, then we offer it. We think that is the best way for us to do it, because then we understand your protocols. We've helped write them. Like, I can train my nurse practitioners and doctors on what you're doing. And because of that, they're $39 per visit. There's no monthly fee. They're just $39 per visit. Typically we clear people for, depending on what the service is, if it's weight loss or IV hydration or aesthetics, like anywhere between 6 months and a year, depending on what that standard of care recommendation is.
Cool. Cynthia, did you say MSO is the only way to go? Can an RN own with a supervising physician with set protocol?
Well, so that's going back to my initial slides. It depends on the state, right? So 33 out of 50 states on that list, at least, they would say no. You have to partner with a physician-owned practice. And this is one thing, like, and not to speak ill of other physicians, I didn't know this in the beginning. If I'm honest, the way I built Guardian is that people kept asking me, hey, will you do this? And I was like, man, I could make a pretty living just doing this on my own. And then I figured I couldn't figure it out at all. So I was like, okay, I need to come up with a solution that works for everybody, because this isn't going to work. There's a lot of doctors out there more than willing to supervise and do things. We see this all the time, and this makes it difficult. I'll empathize with people who like are looking around being like, I see like 8 people doing it the other way. I get it. That's frustrating. They're probably all doing it wrong. And it seems like that's just not me saying that so that I can get your business. That's just like, unfortunately, where we're at in the healthcare space right now. It's why the regulators are coming and cracking down and making examples of people, and why I want to encourage you to do it as well as you can from the beginning. So again, one, it depends on your state. There are states where you as the nurse can own the business and the practice of medicine technically and do it all and just have a supervising doctor. It's being looked at, you know what I mean? Like the people are looking at that, but like it's fine. But again, in 33 out of 50 states.
Would you recommend doing it the way you said, with the 100% ownership on both sides, just from the get-go, in case a state changes their mind on the first way?
I would. I mean, like, again, like, I'm really not, I promise I'm not just saying that because it's how we operate, but we didn't do it that way in the beginning. And the more and more our goal became, how do we make sure people can succeed and grow and are protected? And I'll be honest, so when we talk about risk tolerance, when we first started, we were just giving people medical directors. I'd link you up with a medical director. We'd help manage that relationship. And what happened is a bunch of my doctors started to sign managed service agreements and legally own the practices. And I was like, ooh, I don't want them to have to do that, right? Like, I don't want these medical, because they were like, man, like, I don't mind doing it, but like, now I technically own practices. So we went and took all the liability on ourselves. Like, I literally, like, my attorney groups were like, Chris, don't do that. That's that is the worst idea. I'll be honest, like, there was attorneys I had that we worked with a bunch of different groups. They were like, Chris, like, you personally actually as a doctor, like, are taking on a ton of, and I was like, yeah, and I want to. Because it's really like, I want the doctors to feel confident that they can give the oversight without liability. I want the nurses to be able to go and scale what they want to scale, treat patients and do it the right way. I got to a stage in the business where we could take on that risk and we could take on that liability. So we did it. So again, I'm not saying this because, if anything, it adds to my liability, but like, I do. I think that's established in that way just keeps it super clean from you from a business standpoint, right? I think you have to establish that way, like what you own and built is 100% yours and no one can ever question that, right? It's the business operations managed service. You can take that, you can pivot it to Dr. Seitz's PLCs or Dr. Smith's PLC or whatever practice, you can take that and move it and own it and sell it. When you combine the two, so for instance, another example really quick, I'm going on a tangent, I apologize, but if you're in a state where it's not required today, what if you want to franchise out to a different state? What if you want to sell it to somebody in a different state who can afford, like, now you're like, what are you going to do there? Like, then now it get complicated there too. So I recommend it, but it's not a requirement in some states.
Got it. And then 797, who was it that just asked? Will take effect in November. Can you talk about the requirements coming out? Or
I can try. So actually, we will be having Shannon Petrudi on one of our webinars coming up because she is a 797 compliance guru. I don't know a ton about it. So 797 compliance is OSHA requirements typically, and really has to do with like who can mix medications, right? I'm simplifying it, and I'm very oversimplifying it. But like, do I need a hood? You know, can I mix my own medications? Is that okay? Can I, compound pharmacy stuff? There's a lot of questions and gray around it. Even the regulations that are coming out, there's still a lot of clarification that we don't have. Again, I can put you in touch with resources who know it a lot better than I do. And also I would say making sure that you are partnered with compounding pharmacies who can send you things where you don't have to do it. Even if it costs more, might be worth it, right? Just from a business operation standpoint, like sometimes it's just easier to pay a little bit more to get the right things in place. And I know that's the whole purpose of compounding pharmacies is to make sure that they're mixing the stuff for you and sending it in the right capacity. So.
Got it. Cool. And then Benilda, I think we answered your question again. Julie, I am purely a mobile IV hydration business in New York, and I cannot find any info to tell me not having a storefront is illegal or legal. I store supplies at my house and have nurses that work for me.
Mobile IV hydration is a weird one because no regulator ever planned for it, so there's really no guidelines around it. If you ask some people, they feel that the regulators are really going to crack down on that soon and force it to go. I would argue that the cat's out of the bag already, though, and you'd have to regulate so many entities doing that at scale that, like, I don't know how they're going to pull that off. So I would say today you're probably fine. There's nothing in place today that requires that you have to have a storefront. Where you do have to be careful is with shipping medications. So this is something that people don't realize. Like, if you are shipping medications to yourself, that's okay if you have established that like your business address is a healthcare practice business address. So you should check on that with just the pharmacy that you're working with. If you are then taking those medications and shipping them out to your employees, that's illegal. You can't ship medications, and people are doing this all over the place. I have a big important meeting tomorrow addressing a huge issue with a larger client that we have as of today, where they're like, we just found out, like, ordering a bunch of medications and then reselling them out and shipping them. Like, unless you have a state license to ship and distribute pharmaceuticals, you can't do that. So again, but talk to your pharmacy. Like, Empower's got a great resource. Olympia's got great resources. Like, the pharmacies themselves, they know this stuff. So just make sure that you're, touching base with them. They're going to be the best resource for that. But in terms of the question about mobile IV hydration, as of today, yeah, I mean, there's not really anything that says you can't do it. Just have a plan, right? Have a plan in case something does come down the line where they say, hey, you do now.
Yeah, got it. Cool. If I utilize Garda Medical, what is the limit of nurses that can operate under the medical director?
So we don't really have a limit. So we have actually changed our model quite a bit, where we actually have a team approach to medical oversight now. So now when you come on board with us, you don't get one medical director, you get a team of medical directors, and we scale that team as needed. What we found is that some doctors were really good at signing forms on a timely fashion, and others were not. And some doctors were really good at answering clinical questions in our mobile app, and some were not. So we decided, you know what? Let's use people where they're the best at. So we really have kind of a team approach now. So now when you come on with us, you get a regional medical director who, if they need to own the healthcare practice on your behalf, and things like that we talked about today. We have a core compliance doctor who's going to sign your pharmacy forms, chart reviews, all that good stuff. You get a clinical education director who's in our mobile app answering your questions on a daily basis. So it depends on the state. Like some states do say how many nurses a doctor can oversee at a time. We will scale our medical oversight as you scale. Our platform is more user-based. So we have a base plan, and then you kind of pay per user. So if you scale up, you pay an extra $15 per nurse type of thing, just so we can keep track of licenses. We're actually doing some cool things now too, where we monitor all licenses. So once a month, we run a full report with all the major regulatory licensing bodies, and can give you a report on if any of your employees have a flag on their license or have those kind of things. So, so we don't really have a limit to it. We'll scale with you, type of thing.
Sweet. And then Johnny gave you a huge shout out and talked about CPOM and how important that is. So make sure you guys are looking at that.
Awesome.
And thanks, Jennifer does a 49-51 split between a doctor and a business with an esthetician need an MSO between them.
So if you're doing the 49-51 split, you're fine today. I mean, like I said, you're legally structured appropriately. Again, I would just go back to maybe asking yourself the question well, what happens if that doctor decides he's not interested anymore, or retires, or heaven forbid gets hit by a bus, or if you want to go sell this business in 10 years, is there an expectation that he or she gets to take 51%? So I think these are the questions you have to ask in that kind of model. But again, if you are a 49% owner, you don't have to put a different agreement in place. You're operating an agreement for the entity. You would define who is shareholder rights, who has the ability to take money, leave, that kind of thing.
Yeah, got it. And then, Benilda, do you have templates for MSO practice?
Yeah. So when we work with our clients, we have an entire managed service agreement template already. If you want to take and have your attorneys review and redline, we always, we'll always take a look at that stuff. So yeah, we provide all that. And then we also have just a ton of protocols, procedures, standing orders for IV hydration, aesthetics, hormone replacement therapy, ozone therapy. We're building out a pretty robust library of all that stuff once you come on with us, so that you don't have to do it yourself. And now I'm trying to figure out how to do it with AI. So cool things to come.
Oh, that's the new thing.
Right.
There's a ton of questions, so I'm going to try to get to one or two more.
Sure.
Because I'm a stickler for ending on time, because I know everybody's got scheduled this out. I've lost track. There's literally 100 questions. So sorry guys, we're not going to get to all of them. But I would just go to Jamie's on. Jamie, can you drop the link to Guardian MD? And then if you guys have more questions, just schedule a consult. We'll do one or two more. Any update on Florida's House Bill 725? It's super specific.
That's super specific. I actually know what they're talking about. And no, there's not really an update on that. You're just kind of waiting to see what they do. There's also a bill in Texas right now that's trying to limit, scope of practice. I mean, these things are going to keep happening. And I think the testament to a business is not how fast you can scale it, not how much money you bring in, but can you pivot when things change? And I think that, like I said, if you, there's actually a thing that hangs in my office. It's a Chinese symbol, and it actually means in the Chinese language, both crisis, and it's the same symbol for opportunity. Just super cool. And it's actually a part of their words. It's a very Americanized, but that's the idea, right? Yeah. So and I love it because it reminds me that your business is going to thrive and strive based on how you address things that could be can you make it into an opportunity, right? So being aware of these things, putting things in place ahead of time, thinking ahead to what am I going to do when I do this? What am I going to do when this happens? What happens if the regulators do this? How am I going to pivot? And finding a way forward. Again, I think that's the key.
Freaking Braveheart going on here. I didn't know we were going to get
exactly.
That's beautiful. Because that's true. Life is always happening for you. It's sometimes hard to see that. Mm-hmm. But when one door closes, another opens. And if you freak out and go under during a crisis, then so will your business. So I love that. Right. Let's see. All right. We'll do one more. Trying to find a short one because there's some long ones. But we'll record all these guys. And if you book a thing, they'll talk to you.
Yeah, please.
All right. Johnny's answering it. Johnny, I love you.
Johnny, thank you.
Besides Chris, questions. Well, you guys are both my favorite. Let's be honest. Do you offer newsletters, updates to help keep clients like up to date on compliance?
We're trying to. I'm gonna put it that way. So we don't have a great system for it today. There's obviously a lot changing, but we are putting some things in place and actually partnering with some more like newsletter type groups to help us kind of do that. So that is in the works and coming. And yeah, absolutely. Like keep us accountable.
It changes like every second, so you'd have to send an email every second. Yeah. And the cool part, I heard this from somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know more about this, but like if a federal law comes out, it still has to get approved by the state, right? So if the Fed says this is the new rule for medical, but then each state has, because I'm in Florida and we pretty much like reject everything.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So
that's what you guys do.
Like, is that the same for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, yes. Again, like it's that separation between like the legal aspect of running healthcare practices and licensing. And licensing is a different, again, those are the boards of nursing and stuff. Like that's a different licensing agent than like, so like there's typically not going to be a federal thing that comes out that limits a license because licenses are state specific, but the federal things will come out about compounding and then, yeah, a lot of times it has to trickle down. Again, I would just don't be the one who like waited to see if they came to check. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like some people are like, yeah, they'll never get to me. And it's like, I hope not. Right? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not always the best plan. Hope right. Business. Johnny says he loves your newsletters. Oh, hey Pam. Going home, it's so much. 797 it's a ton, and we're actually sourcing experts as well for IV Biz Bash because it's a huge topic and everyone wants to know about it. So we have a couple that are going to speak at IV Biz Bash that are going to be killer on that side of things. Well, cool. I don't know if you want to do like a last kind of send off or.
Yeah, no. So again, I want to thank everybody again for taking the time. I know it's a holiday weekend. It's it's summer, but again, I really do feel like even showing up and listening is a testament that you guys want to do it right and do what's best for your patients. And as a doctor, I appreciate that. As a patient, I appreciate that. As a business owner, I think that's awesome. So again, I commend you all for that. Yeah, if we didn't get to your question, please just, like I said, check us out, guardianmd.com. You can book a discovery call. If we can't answer your question, we offer free consultations with our attorney groups too and stuff. So we're here for you.
And I'm going to say this on a public webinar, maybe through you, Chris, but we talked about anyone that comes through our group and stuff gets a discount, I think, right? We talked about this. That books through.
We are talking about it now. No, I think we did. Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. So
we did. I remember it now. I was like, I'm going to say this. It's going to be bad. Yeah. So yeah, everybody just mention IV Biz Bash on your discovery call. But we're working with Guardian heavily through our software, through our companies, and I couldn't recommend them more. So
appreciate that.
Definitely book, and we put a link in here. We'll send an email out to everybody with the recording, the slides, and the booking link. And again, I always say when people show up to our webinars, I'm like, you're in the top 1% because most people won't show up to these things. Most people won't do the work. So you're going to be successful just by being here. And Chris, I can't thank you enough, man. I love it.
Absolutely. No problem at all. Anytime. Really appreciate you guys. Have a great holiday weekend.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have the best day ever. Later.